Let's talk some Super Bowl, people. It's time for the Two Deep NFL podcast, proudly brought to you by our friends at GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network. Eric Eager found some sleeves from SumerSports.com. Soren Petro with you from Sports Radio 810 WHB. A lot to cover here in this Super Bowl edition of the Two Deep NFL podcast. How good do the two quarterbacks have to play? What will it mean for Brock Purdy? We see yet another rookie contract quarterback in the Super Bowl. How important is that to this equation? How important is this for Kyle Shanahan's legacy for what it's going to mean for him? Andy Reid's legacy, Patrick Mahomes' legacy, what all is at stake for everyone involved in this game? We got some hires around the coaching ranks. Mike Macdonald is the Seahawks head man. Dan Quinn is Washington's head man. I think Eric Eager said we would see that. We'll talk about all of it right here. The Super Bowl edition of the Two Deep NFL podcast begins right now.
You're listening to the Two Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. Two Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro was the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Two Deep is proudly brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. GAN Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Two Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
All right, back at it. Remember, we generally stream live. We have to record because of travel this week, but we generally stream live. Tuesday nights, 9 p.m. Central. If you're catching us via the podcast, you can be a part of the conversation in the chat room. With the conversation, always a lively conversation in the chat room here on the 2 Deep NFL podcast. And guys, let's start with the Super Bowl first. We'll get to some of the NFL news here in a second, but the Kansas City Chiefs and San Francisco 49ers, a rematch of 4 years ago, Jeff. Obviously the 49ers are trying to break through and get back on top. I do think it's interesting. The Chiefs play to win their fourth Super Bowl. If they win it, the only teams they'll tie the Giants and forgetting one other team that's got four, the Giants and Packers that have 4 Super Bowls. The only teams that would have more would be the Niners and Cowboys with 5, the Steelers and Patriots with 6. That's what's at stake for them. As I just mentioned, the Niners would be going for 6. They'd have as many Super Bowls as any franchise in football. That's what's at stake for the two teams. What's at stake for the two coaches? Does this get Andy Reid into the discussion of the all-time best coach in NFL history?
No. I mean, he's top 5, but he still has a long way to go to catch Bill Belichick. I mean, rings ultimately matter in this conversation, and Belichick's got 6 as a head coach and 2 as a defensive coordinator. But yeah, I mean, for Andy Reid, it solidifies his legacy as one of the most impressive coaches we've ever seen. I think a lot of times you look at his win total and the amount of time he's spent coaching, and that people will say, oh, it's kind of a longevity, you stuck in the game long enough to get these wins kind of award, a la Marty Schottenheimer or people like that, George Allen. But, he's been a phenomenal coach. And so to do this, especially the way he's done it this year, without having all the toys and the bells and whistles on his offense and having to adjust late in the game and relying on players that a lot of people didn't know anything about, like Rashee Rice and Isaiah Pacheco on offense to help his quarterback out. Yeah, I think it's going to be tremendous for him. And the flip side, Kyle Shanahan, we all know he's got the name, but he's got to deliver more than just NFC championship wins to get himself into a different tier with the Sean McVays, the younger coaches out there. So, yeah, I think for both coaches, there's a lot on the line as far as legacy goes.
Yeah. Eric, what do you think's on the line for these guys?
I think for Shanahan, it's not quite there yet, but it's in a similar place where Reid was in 19, where you're great, right? Everybody respects you. everybody loves playing for you, but you haven't won a Super Bowl. And you got to win one at some point, I think, to be a Hall of Fame guy. I think we all believe he'll win one day, but we also talked about on the Red, Gold, and Bold show, like the Niners are kind of they're in the last, this is a precipice point for them. So it's big for him. I think for Andy Reid, I disagree a little bit with Jeff. I think that you made a really strong point on air on 810. Like his record without the Hall of Fame quarterback is such that you can make a pretty good case. And you can't get to 6 without getting to 3 first. And so I think that's a big, so it's a huge game for both guys. From a legacy standpoint, it probably matters more to Andy because Andy's ultimate goal is to reach the top. And I don't think he reaches the top without winning this one. Kyle's goal is probably to make the Hall of Fame, which I don't think he reaches unless he wins one. And he'll have probably plenty of opportunities to win one. Maybe not plenty. The NFL is weird, but he'll have enough. He'll probably get to around this area again. Whereas I think Reid, he doesn't have that many more chances to win 6, right? It's like he's probably got to thread a pretty thin needle over the next few years.
That's an interesting perspective that you have on that because it's Reid going for the best of all time versus Shanahan just trying to get in the mix. Right now, Shanahan is trending towards, if he doesn't win this, he's already gone farther than Don Coryell, who I'm going to compare him to. Don Coryell never made a Super Bowl, and he made the Hall of Fame ultimately as a brilliant offensive mind, but not as a great coach, really. What he got was like, boy, look at the way he really furthered the passing game. Kind of, that was kind of the MO on him. Shanahan needs to get over that hump to be a great coach. Right now, he's a play caller. He's an innovator. He's a play designer. He's not a great coach, and he needs that game for it. And I agree. We've got enough of a track record. It's his second appearance, so it would certainly seem like he's going to get there again. But he, like a number of teams, they're going to have to do a lot of work this offseason with the way their cap structure is. So will he be back? Yes, Jeff, I think he'll be back, but I don't know that he'll be back next year. Like, I don't know that it's guaranteed. And how good is Brock Purdy really is going to be a big, question as to, how many more chances he gets, how many more bites of the apple he gets to take, right? How good do you think Brock Purdy's career will ultimately be?
Yeah, I think we all know the limitations based on where he was drafted and his size. And I think somebody had made a good point about this the other day I was having a conversation with. It's like we want to look at guys like Mahomes and say that's the standard, but then anybody who's not that way, we want to condemn them. And so it's like there's room here for growth for Brock Purdy. And so when you're looking at a guy, it used to be that if a guy had 4,000 yards and 30 touchdown passes and led the league in passer rating and averaged 9.9 yards per attempt and took his team to a Super Bowl, we'd be sitting here talking about, God, this guy's going to have an amazing career. And we just can't seem to find enough reasons to wonder what he's going to become. I think he's going to have a really good career. I think maybe he falls in that Matt Ryan range. Maybe he falls in that Tony Romo range as far as statistics go or production. But the guy's a winner. And it's a lot like, I'm not going to sit here and say he's Tom Brady, but he does have some things that Brady had at this stage of his career that remind me more of Tom than even Patrick does. People look at Patrick and comparing to Brady based on the wins, right? And the accomplishments and becoming the GOAT. But when Tom Brady was starting his career in New England as a starter, I remember talking to Bill Belichick in his office, and he pulled out a sheet where he ranked Tom Brady or he evaluated Tom Brady, and he said the only reason we're keeping this guy is because of his intangibles. And he was the 4th-string quarterback at the time. And that's what Brock Purdy brings to the table is the intangibles, the competitive nature, the smarts, the anticipation on throws. There's guys who've done a lot in this league doing that kind of stuff. Brady's one of them. Russell Wilson's one of them. And so I think that at the very least, he's going to be a Pro Bowl quarterback for a while, and a guy, if he's pushed Kyle Shanahan, much like Mahomes with Andy Reid, is going to have a pretty good run.
Eric, we talked about, and Jeff just mentioned it, the 9.9 yards per attempt, that leads the league. He set a San Francisco 49ers passing yardage record this year. He threw for 30 touchdowns. So why don't we embrace? Is it just the draft pedigree that he was Mr. Irrelevant and not a first-round pick? If he's a first-round pick, he's validating everything we thought he was going to be, right? If that's what it was, like, look, we knew he was going to be very good, and he is very good. Is that all it is? Is that we put a ceiling on him that he has to keep breaking through because he didn't get drafted high? I mean, like, it used to be everybody who was a later round pick and had a little bit of success, you immediately started talking about Tom Brady. We're not talking about Tom Brady, right? Like Jeff just did, but no one else is. No one's been like, oh, this is the next Tom Brady. This is the next guy. You know, why is it? What is, or is everybody just wrong on this kid? Well, like, what are the limitations as to why we're not saying, hey, this is a fair fight. This is an even match. Patrick Mahomes against, Brock Purdy.
Well, it's a couple things. It's like, yeah, we all cling to our priors in life, right? So first impressions matter a ton. And, the fact is Purdy's career at Iowa State was very underwhelming. And in fact, it started better than it finished. And we're all still over-indexing on that very fact. But the second part is we've seen this before, right? We've seen how a team, next year we talked about this on the other show, 5 players on next year's team have a cap hit of over $20 million who are not quarterbacks. Like, we've seen this before, like with even more quarterbacks with better pedigree, Dak Prescott, but even down the list, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, guys who have been drafted high with what many consider to be kind of mediocre skills, they end up not being as good once you've taken away the structures that come with them. So I think that everybody's kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, and there's an aesthetic to it. I kind of roll my eyes a little bit at that because these are the same people that told you, and I was that, I'm there too, that Zach Wilson had a rubbery arm and that, all the, like, they're the same people that screw up this evaluation over and over and over again. And so that's where I get, the same people that said tank for Tua, or Herbert sucked, or Jordan Love sucked. And Mac Jones was the best quarterback of that draft after 1 year. Like, we're bad at this, right? And quarterback is a very contextual position that we're not particularly good at evaluating. Bryce Young went ahead of CJ Stroud, and it took like 2 games to realize that one guy is much better than the other guy. And so I think that it's a lot of that. I think it's a lot of people that are rooting for their predictions. And with Purdy, I think that a lot of people just simply can't believe that he's had the success, and they're waiting for his downfall.
Jeff, who has the coaching edge? Andy Reid, Matt Nagy, Steve Spagnuolo, the rest of the assistants, of course, but the top end, the coordinators and the head coach versus Kyle Shanahan, Chris Forster, Clint Kubiak are co-OCs, Steve Wilkes, a defensive coordinator. Who has the edge when it comes to the sidelines?
Yeah, you say that with a straight face, like you start reading off the names.
Well, Matt Nagy is not considered a positive, right? I think a lot of people are like, well, it doesn't matter because Andy Reid's the guy who calls it. I think Matt Nagy's underrated because everyone thinks he was somehow a colossal boob in Chicago when he took, Mitch Trubisky to the playoffs twice. I mean, I think that's a tremendous accomplishment as a head coach because Mitchell Trubisky sucks. Yeah. But, that's not the view that people have nationally. So, Steve Spagnuolo didn't get a sniff. Like, we heard more Clint Kubiak talk for head coaching gigs than we did Steve Spagnuolo in this go around. So I'm with you. I think you and I both are going to go Chiefs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Aren't we?
You're talking about, a guy who's.
There's no buzz about the Chiefs coordinators, is there?
Oh, I think Spagnuolo's getting a lot of love this postseason, and it's justifiably so. I mean, he's done some amazing things with his defense and turned it into a powerhouse, and really made it the reason why the Chiefs have gotten this far. They're not going to be they might not be in the playoffs. They didn't have this level of defense this year. I mean, that's where they were offensively in terms of some of their struggles. But yeah, I mean, clearly the edge favors the Chiefs in this department. And I've said it on our last podcast that they've really gotten to this point by being smarter than their opponents. And Andy made the point of going back to that Raiders loss towards the end of the year and saying that, there was a big wake-up call for this team. And I was on record back then as saying they'd be a better team once they realized what they have to work with, and they made that adjustment. They started playing a different brand of football. They're playing very much like Alex Smith is quarterbacking this team and not Patrick Mahomes. But it works because they've got a great defense. Mahomes can make enough plays to turn a game or to keep the momentum going in their favor. And it's, again, going back to your radio show with Mike Sandow from The Athletic talking to you about George Foreman fighting Muhammad Ali. It's like, this is the rope-a-dope. I may not be as smooth and as quick as I used to be, but I still can figure out a way to get in your head and take advantage of you. So I think that's what Andy Reid brings to the table. Kyle Shanahan's done a great job with the Niners, but this is not a, it's a mismatch when it comes to coaching.
Yeah. That's interesting. So the sidelines go to the Chiefs. The quarterback goes to the Chiefs. The defense goes to the Chiefs. Will we agree on that they got the better defense?
Yes, I think it's unquestionable that the defense is better on the Chiefs side.
Okay, and yet the Chiefs are an underdog. Why, Eric?
Well, I think that the weapons for the Niners are much, much better than the Chiefs. And so, like, Ayuk is a phenomenal player, 1,300-yard player. Samuel had a little under 900 yards and then 225 on the ground. McCaffrey led the league in rushing, had 21 touchdowns. Kittle has a 1,000-yard tight end. Even Jawan Jennings is like a really good third or fourth. Like, Jawan Jennings would be wide receiver 2 on the Chiefs. It's that, right? And people love weapons. And people love depth at weapons. And the fact is like, you can, if you took the names out of it and you told me, hey, one guy during the regular season averaged 10 yards a pass attempt and the other guy averaged 7 yards a pass attempt, and you'd be like, who's favored? You would favor that, like, that's the most reliable statistic. And you could do EPA, expected points added. You could do net adjusted yard, whatever statistic. And even if you fold in the playoffs. And the other part is, right, all the narratives around the Niners were they were front runners. They could get ahead, but they couldn't come from behind. So they answered that bell against the Packers and the Lions as well. So, like, I think that when you look at, like, what's most predictive in the NFL, it's being able to throw the football and on offense. The Chiefs were not all that great at that this year, and the Niners were. And that's what's carrying as far as the betting markets are concerned. Now, if you add in all the rest of the stuff, the Chiefs are better. But it's kind of like the reverse of the 2019 game.
Yeah, I think people forget how good the Niners were when they were really rolling at the start of the year, and they had that lull when they lost 3 games in a row. It's like they were.
And they got
what's that?
And they got kicked in the pants by the Ravens in front of everybody on Christmas.
Yeah, so people forget that, and they also forget, even though the Chiefs have gotten to this point, they forget about the missed field goal at the end of the game in Buffalo. They forget that the Ravens had 3 turnovers and only lost the game by 7 points. They forget about, Tua in the first round on a frozen field. It's like all this stuff does matter in the end. I think the Niners were the better team all year, which is probably why they're favored now. And I think if both teams play their A game, the Niners win. But the Chiefs have played as close to perfect as you can play the last 3 weeks. And that's the thing that worries me. You can sustain that? They have 1 turnover or 1 less turnover against Baltimore. They might lose that game. And they played great.
I do agree. And that's the thing. And I think that's why they're favored is I think people that, most fans watch a game and whatever the outcome is the outcome it would have been if they played that game 1,000 times.
Yeah.
The outcome is the Chiefs would have beat the Ravens 1,000 times in a row by 7 points. And that's not just reality. I think they forget that, the Ravens were 18 inches away from tying that game.
Yeah.
Right? If L'Jarius Sneed doesn't knock the ball out on Zay Flowers, that's 7 more points for the Ravens. I don't want to go reconstruct the whole game. You get what I'm saying? That was a touchdown that came off the board that was going in. And so I'm with you. I think that's part of it is everyone sees the Chiefs. So, well, they're clearly better than the Ravens. I don't think so. They were better that day. I think you could still go back. There's a reason why the Ravens were a 5-point favorite over the Chiefs. If you play that game 100 times, Eric, how many played 100 to play 10 times? How many times did the Chiefs beat the Ravens?
If they play the way that 50,
if the Chiefs play 10 times, don't qualify it. Just give me a measure.
If the Ravens and Chiefs play 10 times, I think they win 50% of the time.
Yeah, I think it's like 5. That's what I was going to say too. That's a game that could have gone either way. Chiefs had the better game plan. If you want to say, well, I think the Chiefs, let's give a 6 out of 10 because the Chiefs are always going to have the better game plan. I'm not going to waste any time arguing. But if you want to tell me 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 for either one of those teams, no. They were really evenly matched teams. And so then people want to take the transitive property and say, well, you beat the Ravens and they crushed the Niners. Therefore, the Chiefs are, well, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't work like that. But I think the Niners are a good team that have holes. To your point, their lull, Jeff, also came when Trent Williams was hurt, Deebo Samuel was hurt. And it looks like they're going to get to the finish line, Eric, for the first time with all their people, right? They're a Stars and Jags team, but all the stars are going to play, right? Is this the ultimate test of depth versus stars? The Chiefs obviously have a very big star, and Patrick Mahomes, Kelce, Chris Jones, they have a few stars, but the Niners are all about, like you just mentioned, all the $20 million guys. Is this stars versus depth?
Yeah, it's weird though, right? Because it's inverted in the weirdest way though, because the Chiefs star is the QB and the Niners stars are everybody else. So it's a very straight, and that's why I think there's a lot of smart people on the Chiefs, because the depth, like in game, if one of the Niners players gets hurt, I think they're screwed, right? Whereas in game, if I think any of the Chiefs players gets hurt, I think they're probably fine unless it's Patrick, right? We've seen Willie Gay
miss a game. If Kelce goes down, that
yeah, but I think
or Pacheco,
but like we've seen Willie Gay go down. We've seen.
I'll object. I'll object to that as well, because I think if Chris Jones goes down, they're in big trouble. Because not because they can't play without Chris Jones, they've done that. But now you're asking them to play without Chris Jones, Charles Omenihu, and Derek Nottie. I think where they sit right now, Chris Jones is a vital player to play in this game to take advantage of the offensive line inequities you've talked about, Eric. If he goes out, Mike Pennell and what?
Tershawn Wharton.
Yeah. I mean, listen, and probably no one's going to go down in the game. Not every game has 2 stars that go down. So,
but they lost Mike Edwards in the Bills game. They lost, they're a team that has, and in the playoffs last year, they lost L'Jarius Sneed, who's a superstar. They lost him in the AFC Championship game, and they were fine. Whereas the Niners, their losses, as Jeff talked about, it's Deebo and Trent Williams, and when their guys go down, it's catastrophic for this team. It's more catastrophic. I'm not saying that it's not catastrophic. It's more catastrophic because no player in this league is more dependent on, Purdy's been phenomenal, but he depends so much more on the play of those around him than Mahomes does, and so does Kyle. Kyle Shanahan constructs a very specific offense, whereas Andy Reid is a lot more flexible. So I just think the Chiefs are more resilient, but to your point, the Niners have better stars right now, other than at the quarterback position. So that's what makes this game so cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. But we do agree that the Omenihu loss is significant, and they can't afford to lose anything else on the defensive line. Jeff, I know you agree with that.
Oh, right? Yeah, I'm totally. Yeah, I think it's he was an underrated part of their success. And yeah, I think it's just because, again, you just think about being able to take advantage of an underwhelming offensive line for the Niners, who really rely a lot on what Trent Williams brings to the table at left tackle. I mean, Trent Williams being able to block somebody one-on-one is huge because it allows the other people to fan out, and you can do other things as far as double teams and stuff like that. But yeah, you lose a player like that, it makes the Niners game plan a lot easier to get after, especially when you think about that Baltimore game when there were so many tip balls that led to interceptions for the Ravens in that game, and that's Omenihu's been really good at that this year.
Yeah, no, I think that is a big part for the Chiefs in that. If the game is high scoring, who's in favor, Eric? If it's an up and down game, if they get going up and down,
49ers.
Yeah.
Okay. Low scoring favors
Chiefs.
Okay. Simple as that.
I don't think it's that simple, but I think that the Chiefs are very, very and so when I talked about the Ravens game, why I think the Chiefs are very comfortable playing 20-10. And that's why, we saw it. It was so weird because I was watching the second half of that game and I'm like, offensively, it feels like the Titans game. It feels like the Colts game. It feels like the Bengals game with Andy Reid. What I thought was turtling, Andy Reid was just trusting his defense, and this defense is good enough for that trust now. in the second half of these games. Like they're very comfortable getting a first down or two and punting and like making the other team play the whole field. And the NFL is this way now, right? The NFL is the peak NFL game is like 8 or 9 possessions per team. And with the current rates at which they score, like the Chiefs are very willing to play that kind of game. And like they're comfortable in that game. And the thing about Purdy, which is interesting, and this is why when you look at the Niners games against the Packers and the Lions and why those teams had them on the ropes, is that when another team can run the football, there's this in statistics we talk about EPA is expected points added. That's a play-for-play stat, and it's not the perfect one. The one I like to look at more sometimes is what's called drive success, which is how often do you take a first down and, however, by any means necessary, get another first down. And there's like the confluence of like how often you're able to turn one first down into another set of downs. And the Chiefs are like very okay defensively with giving up first downs. But eventually they don't give up big plays. And they're very comfortable in that shell because they tackle well. So I think in a low scoring game, it just favors them. If the game gets out of control, I just don't think their offense can reliably get big plays the way that they used to.
Yeah, I think if you look at the Chiefs throughout the course of the second half of the season, especially, their personality changes when they're behind. And you can feel the pressure on them, both on offense and on defense to make play. You saw it in the Raiders game when that was a whole meltdown. But you saw it in the Packers game, especially when the Packers were really able to move the football early in that game and score points and create big plays against the Chiefs secondary. It really rattled them. And that's something that, if they're chasing the Niners, if they get down 7-0 or 10-0 or 14-3, then Andy's got to call a different kind of game. And then Pacheco's not as big of a factor in the game. And then you're asking more of Rashee Rice. And now you're asking more of Jawan Taylor. And so they want to have it in a controllable, manageable situation because they haven't shown the ability to come back, in games this season. So, I totally agree with Eric. If this is like in the 30s, it totally favors the Niners.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I want to check the Dolphins game, but the only time they trailed 10-3 to the Bills early in the second quarter. That's their biggest deficit, right? They were down 3.
They trailed multiple times to the Bills, but none by more than 7.
Yeah, against the Bills, they trailed 3-0, 10-3. They scored to make it 10-6, 17-13, and 24-20. Yeah, I guess they did. So it was back and forth, but they never got to where they were chasing the double digits, which was
the last time they trailed by double digits was the Bengals game.
I'm talking about the playoff run.
Yep.
Like since they've been going. So they've definitely played this game from in front. We're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crew. A written warranty comes with every project that Gann Asphalt and Concrete does, whether it's the concrete bumpers, the line striping, the seal coating, anything. One contractor, all things parking lot. It's Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you avoid unnecessary delays, costly expenses. Focus on your business. Let Gann Asphalt and Concrete go to work for you today. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Make sure you tell them you heard about them here on the Two Deep NFL podcast. I want to put this out there. Mike Greenberg and Colin Cowherd came out and said Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback of all time. Right? They said that this week. I've heard it phrased a number of different ways. Just before I tell you some of the things that we talked about this week on the program, my radio show, just get your thoughts. Jeff, where does it sit? Where's Patrick Mahomes' place in history going into this game, and how might this game affect it? How would you describe where he sits right now?
Going right now, he's like right now he's top 5, no doubt. Now the question is how you want to criteria. There's 2 ways to have this conversation, and we can have it both ways. One, is he the best quarterback I've ever seen? Yes, he's the best quarterback I've ever seen. Is he the greatest? When you talk about greatest, you're talking about accomplishments. You're talking about productivity. You're talking about championships and all that stuff, stats. And so, he's the best, but he's climbing the charts of the greatest. And so right now, if you're asking me to pick my quarterbacks, Brady's at the top of the list. Peyton Manning's up there. Joe Montana. I think he's right below those 3. And then throw in whoever else you want to throw in, John Elway, Marino, whoever the 5th guy is. But I think he's, Yeah, I mean, because the things he's done, the way he's played, the way he's elevated this franchise. We had this argument last week about how far ahead this group is how far ahead the Chiefs are with Mahomes and Reid compared to everybody else in the league. And it was a good debate. The one thing I thought after the fact I should have said was, Michael Jordan is the greatest player I ever saw, but he also didn't play against Larry Bird or Magic Johnson in their prime. And so that's kind of how I feel about Patrick right now. I think the longer he plays, the more he will check those other boxes. But right now, productivity-wise, there's other guys who've done more in the league who I think are greater players at the position.
All right. And what's at stake in this game, Jeff?
At this game, well, he gets 3, so that puts you into select company. I mean, that puts you up there with your favorite Troy Aikman. It puts you up there with Montana, right?
Montana, Bradshaw, and Aikman.
Montana had 4, right? Montana had 4, right? Yeah. So
Montana and Bradshaw had 4. Aikman had 3, and that's it, right?
That's
Eric,
it. That's it.
Anybody?
Montana, Bradshaw, 4. Aikman, Elway. No, Elway just had 2.
Elway had 2. Yeah. Eli had 2.
Eli
Payton had 2. So yeah, it puts you into select company. The other thing I'll say too about the best conversation, those guys I just mentioned, Aaron Rodgers would be on that list with Mahomes, and there's no way I'd put him in the top 5 of the greatest quarterbacks ever because of that. So, But yeah, I think that, but he moves into a category to where it's like that he's got a shot at chasing down Brady with a win here.
Eric, take your shot at defining it. Where does he sit now? What's at stake in the game?
Can I ask a question of both of you guys
Yes.
that I think will be interesting in probing this answer? When was Tom Brady the best for either? Well, so backing up, Brady's the greatest of all time for me. Okay, and I agree with Jeff wholeheartedly. But maybe Jeff, when was Brady ever the best for you, and when did that happen?
That was 2007, right?
Yeah. 5,050. He's
No.
definitely the best.
Okay, was he ever the best of all time?
Not until the end, probably.
I think like you mean like best passer of the ball. I get what you're saying. He's more of the career accomplishment, like more of the system guy that just maximized everything that was there.
But at some point he did cross the Rubicon and become like maybe not the greatest or the most talented or whatever, but he became like in that conversation. He passed and became truly talented, right? Like truly a guy who could throw every pass and all that kind of stuff. But like, so because the Travis Kelce thing came up this week where he was like, George Kittle's the best tight end in football, and everybody's like, and I'm like, and I made a remark on Twitter. I'm like, oh, this is the Chiefs being a masterclass. And people are like, well, he's right, and I'm like, well, when you're Travis and you have runaway accomplishment, you don't actually give a shit who anybody else thinks is better. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like in the football analytics world, like you could tell me that you think like X, Y, and Z is better, but like who wrote the first book, who has the, I don't care. Like it doesn't matter to me. And so was
that a humble brag about how Eric Eager is the Travis Kelce of football analytics?
Yeah.
Okay. So make sure.
Right.
But like, so, and you can believe that or not, but I don't care. Like you can have an opinion, but like I have my accomplishments and like I'm proud of them. So like, and so I think that I agree with Jeff. Mahomes is the best quarterback I've ever seen play, but Tom Brady is the most accomplished and best player that's ever played in the league, regardless of position. So I put Mahomes. Mahomes to me right now is like tied with Peyton Manning, where you like Peyton Manning, like for 2 Super Bowls, changed the game fundamentally from like where it was to where he finished. He changed quarterbacking. He never had the accomplishments of Tom Brady. But at times, I think a lot of people at the time thought he was the better player, but it didn't matter because he didn't have accomplishments. I think if Mahomes, and then you have guys like Montana, Marino, Elway, guys like that. They're kind of down the list a little bit. The Y.A. Tittles, the Unitas, all those guys that I never watched play. And then if Mahomes wins this game, he's firmly second in my opinion, and he's on his way, and he has a shot to be the best of all time. I don't think if he doesn't get to like 4 or 5 Super Bowls, you could ever really put him in the best of all time conversation with Brady, because 7 is an egregious number. And especially
and 10, 7 and 10 total, right?
Yeah. Well, and especially the one that, to me, where Tom Brady's run up the score even after retirement is how bad Belichick has been without him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we also don't know how good, like, the other part that's got to be part of this is once Andy Reid retires, we do have to see what Patrick is. And so I think I put Patrick like tied with Peyton Manning right now, but I think that if he wins, he's firmly second. But I think he's got a ways to go to get to Tom Brady from a most accomplished best of all time. Yeah. But I think as far as talent wise, he's right up there.
I agree with everything you guys said. I'm lockstep with you. I think his peak, Blair Kirchhoff had a great point about this. His peak value is higher than anyone's ever been. He is the best that there's ever been playing the position for the spot. But to be the greatest, you have to have the body of work, right? And that still goes to Tom Brady. What I think is at stake, though, is what you got to there at the end, Eric, is what at stake is sole possession of second place. I think he's where you said, Jeff, with Peyton Manning, and that's where he sits
he goes up
on the whole career. But with a back-to-back, Peyton Manning didn't do that, right? He goes into that group of just 3 other guys that won 3 or more, and he's got a back-to-back and played back-to-back Super Bowls twice. Like, I think the career accomplishments are burned so brightly in this one little section of his career that he does eclipse everybody else. And he grabs firm control of, he is playing quarterback better than anyone's ever played it, and is the second best body of work quarterback of all time. That's what I think's at stake with this game for him. If he loses, it's like, then you're still like, is he more than Manning? Is he,
that's the question that Eric raised that I'll pose to you guys. If he wins it and he never wins another, does he get hurt by that as his career goes forward? People say, oh, well, Andy Reid was a bigger part of it. Travis Kelce, that becomes an interesting. I don't think it should be right, but I think that would hurt him by not winning
the
more.
The same way that Peyton Manning's last Super Bowl was a defense-aided Super Bowl, and that Tom Brady for 8 years after just ran up the score on him.
I mean, he blows Troy Aikman out of the water.
Yeah.
And we've had fun with my thoughts on Troy Aikman, the quarterback, but he blows him out statistically. But no one talks about Troy Aikman being one of the best quarterbacks of all time, right? Hall of Fame, he's in, but one of the best. No one talks about it because he won 3 championships in 4 years. There was like this perfect mix, and that was it. The rest, before and after, nothing. If Patrick Mahomes goes and puts up a lot of numbers the rest of the way, but never gets back to the Super Bowl again, absolutely, it will drag him down. The same way I said when Tom Brady left the Patriots, if Bill Belichick wants to be undisputed the greatest coach of all times, he will retire right now.
Yep.
And if he doesn't, he damn well better win again. Otherwise, it is an absolute parachute dragging him backwards amongst what his coaching accomplishments are. And rightfully so. Yes, absolutely. If he goes on and never gets there again, it brings him down. 100% it does. We're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. You can focus on your business, not worry about accidents, which cause liability problems. Gann Asphalt and Concrete has been solving parking lot problems since 1994. Full service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. A full warranty, a written warranty comes with every project that the Gann does. Go online to GannAsphalt.com to learn more. Let's talk a little bit about the news of the day, and that is the hires, Jeff. Mike Macdonald to the Seahawks. They talked a lot about how they have a great culture and they want somebody that's going to fit that culture. So it seemed like Dan Quinn would be the guy. They don't go for Dan Quinn. They go for Macdonald. They go from defensive coach to defensive coach. I think Macdonald's a fine prospect as a head coach, but I don't see where this moves the needle in Seattle. What do you think of this hire for the Seahawks?
I'm a big Mike Macdonald fan because obviously he was at Michigan with Jim Harbaugh and got them back on track. It is, I do think it's a little bit risky in the sense of, they're a young team. They've got some defensive talent. It feels he's not a Pete Carroll type personality. He's he's a lot quieter, introspective. Like, I wonder how much of a change it's going to be going from Pete Carroll, who was so rah-rah, high energy, come on, guys, get pumped up, to a guy who's more cerebral. I do know the Ravens people loved him there for the way he coached and how he communicated with players, and he was very collaborative with taking ideas. But it really comes down to who's going to be his offensive coordinator and who's going to be the guy to and what are they going to do at quarterback. because really they have a lot of pieces there, but you still got to deal with the Niners. You still got to deal with other teams in the NFC. Detroit, Philadelphia will find a way to get better, and Dallas. It's just like they'll be good on defense. I just don't know if he's going to be a great head coach. I just don't know that. So I'm kind of in the we'll see how it goes. Phase. He's been a coordinator for a couple of years in the NFL.
Thumbs up or thumbs down on the Macdonald hire, Eric? You said it would happen on our last 2D podcast, but is it going to be successful?
I don't know. I mean, he very clearly knows how to stop the offenses that McVay kind of gave him a little bit of a game, but like the Shanahan offense, he did a pretty good job with. Defensive minded coaches, it's always harder, right? You got to find your offensive coordinator. We've seen in Washington, that's been a chore. We've seen in Las Vegas, that's been a chore for defensive minded guys. And when your quarterback is Geno Smith, that is even more of an important thing. But that being said, I wouldn't hire a head coach just to make Geno Smith happy. That would be a short-sighted move. So he's young. He's 36 years old. He's very bright. They're analytical in Baltimore. So, I think that he's going to bring over some of the principles there, which I know the Seahawks need a fresh update there. They have some pieces in Witherspoon and Brooks and guys like that can make plays. They need to get a pass rush. They've fluffed off at that. I know they have Mafe now and Devin Taylor and guys like that have been okay. I like it for a defensive hire. They have a lot of work to do, though. I think Seattle's got a lot more work than the average team that's been 9-8 for 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if this is a huge success, right? Because the quarterback's not in place. This isn't the Bill Belichick taking over with Justin Herbert there to make the run. Bill Belichick taking over with Dak Prescott that people had like okay, I can kind of see what they're doing there. This will be I'll say this, if he has success with the Seahawks, sustained success with the Seahawks, he's a hell of a coach, because I don't think all the pieces are in place with that. So I'll be very impressed if he does. How about Dan Quinn to the Commanders? Jeff, this just reeks of like, we got to do something, right?
Yeah.
Like Ben Johnson was their guy.
Yep. Yeah.
Dan Quinn could have been had a long time ago. This reeks of like sloppy seconds in Washington.
It reeks of Ron Rivera too. It feels a lot like it could go that same direction, where it's just here's a guy who's got a resume, who's been to a Super Bowl, a defensive dude who great personality, can win the interview. But again, it's like, I think, one, I'm curious to see if he's going to run that same defense now in Washington after what happened in Dallas with it. But two, it's just, you're right. It's just like I don't know if he's the right guy to do what they're trying to do there. Like in Atlanta with Dimitroff, and it was an easier situation to handle because you had a proven GM. It's just a lot of things you're trying to fix at once. And usually when you're doing that as a new organization, new ownership, new coach, got to go find a quarterback, it's hard to hit all those things at the right time. I mean, I look at what Denver's been, a lot of talent there, but quarterback was a mess, coach was a mess, GM is a mystery, and so new ownership. So the patience to be able to say, okay, someone in the room has the vision, believes in the vision, knows where it's going. I don't know if it's going to work out for Dan Quinn there.
You thumbs up or thumbs down on Quinn here?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is very clearly Ben Johnson leaving them at the altar. There were reports that he wasn't a fan of, they brought in people from the Sixers. They brought in people from the Warriors. They brought in people from, analytics, Eugene Shen from previously Baltimore, Miami, and Jacksonville. Like, it is a different approach. Harris is certainly, he's owned, NHL and NBA teams. Spooked him. I've also heard reports that Ben Johnson just doesn't want to be head coach. And, with these owners that kind of have the bench, the Teppers and Harris's like that have all that money, I think some of these guys are like, look, if you give me $15 million, I'm going to listen to you. But like, ultimately, if I get in a room with you and you're still a jackass, like, I'm not going to, I'm still going to, there's only so much I'm going to do. And that happened. And then, so you get Quinn in there, a little worried for Quinn because I don't know if he's set up to have success. And now they're talking about Cliff Kingsbury, and now they're talking about trading up to 1 to go Caleb Williams, which I like Caleb Williams, but all of the data says that the first and second pick, the odds of one being better than the other is not that much. And, Ryan Poles has done a really good job of taking these teams and holding them by the balls in trades. And so if you're Washington and you go from being Ben Johnson, Drake May to Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury, trading all your picks for Caleb Williams, I think that you could be in a difficult spot. So I'm a little worried there. I like Dan Quinn as a guy, and I think like as a coach, he'll get the thing on the green. But to Jeff's point, like Ron Rivera was getting the thing on the green every year. Like they were winning 7-8 games all the time. And so that was what I was worried about is like when you fired Rivera, I felt like you had to be pretty sure that you were going to get Johnson. And it looks like that they were less than pretty sure.
Nothing against Dan Quinn. He can do a serviceable job. And if he took over the Chargers, he would go to the playoffs, I believe, because he can manage a blueprint that gets you into the playoffs. But this is just just a replay of Mike Rivera. This is a terrible hype. It will not work. The only shot it does is if they do move up and get Caleb Williams and he is the it guy. I get what you're saying. There's not much difference between 1 and 2, except when Andrew Luck is there. There's a big difference between Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III. Except when John Elway's there. There's a big difference between John Elway and Todd Blackledge. Like when there are the, defining quarterbacks, and that's where you have to be right. Is Caleb Williams a can't-miss quarterback? If you believe in that, then he's worth.
I think the issue, though, is if you need Cliff Kingsbury to make Caleb Williams the everything everywhere all at once quarterback prospect, is he really that guy? Right? Because when you said Andrew Luck had Ryan Grigson actively working against his well-being, and he was still good. So I think that's where I get worried about that. John Elway had Dan Reeves working actively against his well-being, and he was still pretty good. Like that's where I get worried about. Like, well, we got to bring Kingsbury in here because he's had success with and the Arizona. They give him more crap than they should. I think Kyler was actually much better than the narrative would suggest. But I look at that and I'm like, Kingsbury is a big ego. So how is he going to mesh with Dan Quinn in this kind of arranged marriage? And then you move up for Caleb Williams, and Williams has had kind of a little bit of some reports of he having kind of a big ego type of thing. Yeah. Like how is that all going to work with an owner who is a big shot kind of money guy who people are kind of describing as Tepper light. So like that's where I get like, and you just got out of the Dan Snyder thing.
Yeah, I think Kingsbury as an offensive coordinator is a worthwhile experiment because he went right from being a college coach to being an NFL head coach and never did the coordinator thing. And I think the coordinator thing, I don't think he was ever that good at Texas Tech as a head coach. So I think the coordinator thing, go design your plays and be a mad scientist and don't have to get up there. I also think he inspires no one. Like if you watch the Cardinals in season Hard Knocks, he's a wet blanket.
Sleepy.
Yeah, like this whole Ryan Gosling, look when he wears sunglasses thing. There's no movie star swag about him in front of a room of guys. And so I actually think he could be very good as a coordinator. I think that's a worthwhile experiment. Dan Quinn to answer the questions, handle the defense, him to handle the offense. I actually don't mind that as much. But they got to get the quarterback right when it's all said and done. Last thing I want to hit you, Jeff. We did see so many defensive guys, 5 of 8 defensive guys hired. My thoughts. I would always hire offense unless I was getting like Mike Tomlin, Bill. Let somebody else find the defensive guy that goes beyond, just being a defensive mind. And then if they want to walk away from him, okay, I'll hire him once he's a proven commodity. But I got no interest personally, if I'm an owner, trying to find the prospect that's going to be able to transcend just being a defensive coordinator. Why? And Mike Sando said, well, like who's the hot offensive name out there? Well, I don't listen. It's not about us and the media figuring out who it is. If it comes down to we and the media,
the search committees and the owners.
Yes. Yeah. If it comes down to us and the media have to have a buzz about a guy before he's actually qualified, come on, give me a break. There was no buzz about Sean McVay. and he's been one of the best out-of-the-box hires we've seen. Where are the offensive hires in the NFL? Eric, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, can I? The one that didn't have the buzz is the best hire. Brian Callahan is the best hire.
Yeah.
Like when you look at making a Super Bowl with and everybody talks about how good Burrow is. Burrow is a physically limited good quarterback.
Right. Very
Super
good.
Super Bowl with no offensive line. 9-8 this year. Burrow sucked and was injured most of the year. Then he was hurt, and they literally had Jake Browning, who could not hack a roster in the NFL for half a decade. Higgins was out most of the year. Chase was out most of the year. Their tight ends can't catch a cold. The Joe Mixon's slower than me now that I've lost a few pounds, and he's got this team in like that upper half of the league in success rate and all this kind of stuff. And again, when everybody hired him, they were like, who? To me, that's a great hire. And he brings his dad, and the nepotism thing, I know JT O'Sullivan's like kind of doing his rampage, but like he brings his dad over, and no one other than like Jeff Stoutland and Dante Scarnecchia have been more successful as offensive line coaches in the NFL than Bill Callahan. Like, that's the home run hire. And to your point, none of us were like, hey, go out and get Brian Callahan. That's the whole deal. It's like, yes, that's that. Like, where is this next guy?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? It's like you look at some of the more productive teams, you would have thought Brian Johnson could have been that in Philadelphia, and he is, he went south there. Ken Dorsey in Buffalo, he went south there. You start looking at what Nathaniel Hackett's, what he brought to Denver. There's probably some fear of taking guys who don't call plays. Most of the guys who've been pretty good coordinators who had that shine on them have got jobs, are head coaches now. And so really it came down to Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, Dave Canales, and the guy Eric just mentioned, Brian Callahan, as being the top four guys, offensive guys. I mean, Bieniemy, obviously, that went south in Washington, another place where it didn't work out. And so I do think that's part of it. But a lot of these guys who got hired who were defensive guys were also pretty good person. Dan Quinn can win a room. Raheem Morris can win a room. Gerard Mayo was a guy who'd been in-house. He made sense there. And so you start looking at the guys who went there. Mike Macdonald had the best defense in football, playing for John Harbaugh in an organization that's done great things. Like, they made sense there, but I agree. I hear what you're saying. Like, it does seem weird that all of a sudden we got to this place where defense-minded guys are getting more run. But what DeMeco Ryans in Houston actually resonates too, because he was on a big stage with a big-time quarterback and they won. And so that it can be done.
Yeah. Who knew the name Mike Macdonald before? How many people that watched football knew the name Mike Macdonald before he was hired by the Dolphins?
It was rare. It was few people.
So the idea, and he's been very good.
Yeah.
So the idea that like we have to all be talking about a guy for him to be qualified to hire. I know Eric hates this phrase when I throw it against him, but you're in the get it right business.
Yeah.
Not the agree with the media business, agree with the fan business. You're in the get it right business. So get it right. Like, no excuses, no BS about like, well, go find the guy. Andy Reid was hired as a quarterback coach by the Philadelphia Eagles, a quarterback coach. So the idea that you have to have a Super Bowl appearance as an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator to suddenly be qualified is crap.
Yeah. Well, Mike Kafka would have got a job. We'll probably get a job at some point, but he's stuck with Daniel Jones in a lousy Giants team.
Well, and Mike McCarthy, when he was hired in 2005, he was the offensive coordinator for the lowest rated offense in the NFL, the Alex Smith rookie Niners. Yeah. Like, sometimes it is like just, some people know ball and can like look at a guy and look at more than just the output. Like, sometimes it's better. Like when Mike Tomlin's Vikings, now they they were setting records for run defense, but they had the 31st ranked pass defense in 2006. And then he gets hired to be the Steelers head coach, and it's all its history. Like, sometimes it's just about like, does the guy know football? Sometimes it's more about process than results, as we've all said.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Super Bowl is going to be played on Sunday. I know we made our predictions, but we'll make them here. We made them on our Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. But Eric, what do you got for the Super Bowl?
I have the Chiefs 24-13. I think I think it's a game that they control, and their defense plays a third straight phenomenal game.
All right, Jeff?
I got Chiefs 23-21, although I hate picking teams to repeat because it just feels like something always goes awry when you're going in that situation. But, you look at they've been hot all throughout the postseason. A one-game scenario like this at this level, you're probably smarter to go with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, Andy Reid plus Patrick Mahomes plus the better defense, a team that seems to have found itself as playing its best football, playing within itself against a 49er team that I don't think has the best matchup, right? I don't know that this is, I think the Niners might have wanted to take another shot at the Ravens more so than get this team, but basically better defense, better coaching staff, better quarterback, and I think that's tough to pick against. I'll take the Chiefs 24-20 when it's all said and done. We will break it all down next week on the Two Deep NFL podcast, proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, solving parking lot problems since 1994 with a written warranty coming with every project. You can rest assured you can focus on your business. They'll get that parking lot in shape no matter what the problem is. One contractor, all things parking lot, Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Find them online at gannasphalt.com. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports. My name is Soren Petro, saying thank you very much for joining.